Hello, good evening. This is Carolina, your Spanish interpreter.
We have friends of the missionaries there, so no.
We're live. So we're live now.
So this is not an official meeting, so I'll just go ahead and say, let's start, I guess.
Okay. So just quick introduction. My name is Heather Bixby, Director of Finance. I've been with Newburgh since the middle of August. So pretty familiar with the board. Going to work on names for the budget committee. Names are not my strong suit, but I do want to point out we have two openings on the budget committee, one in zone 3, one in zone 4. So board members, if those are your zones and you'd like to nominate somebody to sit on this committee, please reach out. We can bring them to the board and get them approved before our actual budget committee meeting. And if you let me know ahead of time, I can email them this presentation so that they kind of have the same information that everybody else has gotten.
You said you had 3?
Two,
Oh, 2.
zone 3 and zone 4.
And am I right to understand that this is open to the public right now as we speak, right? So if you live in zone 4 and you're interested in participating in the budget committee, please reach out to me, send an email to me. You can find my email, my contact information. It's too long of a name right now for me to say the whole thing, but go to the district website and reach out to me, send an email to me so that I can help fill out the seat. Thank you.
I would just recommend you do that and ask them again for the main meetings. Probably more viewers at that point.
I will do that.
Okay, so yes.
What are the plans if zones aren't filled?
Okay, so I'll repeat the question just so that people can hear you. The question was, what if the zones aren't filled? We technically do not have to have every position filled in order to have a budget committee meeting. We need one more than half of the budget committee, so we would need 8 members present to approve a proposed budget and pass it on to the board.
I'm thinking. Only because Oregon Department of Revenue states provided you have to have one registered voter for each board member.
But for a quorum to approve the budget, our attendance only has to be one more than half.
Right, but there's difference between quorum.
Right. Right. If we don't have members that want to sit on the budget committee, though, we're not required to, as long as we make an effort to fill those positions, then we can't make somebody sit on the committee. So, yes.
Yeah, so
The preference would be to have a community member from that zone. If you can't find someone from that zone, then it's any registered voter within the district can fill that spot, but if, qualifications, you can't be an employee of the district.
Right.
So, and then we still have the application. Correct?
Is there an application for that?
There is an application.
Okay,
So if they make contact with board members or district office, we can push them that application.
And I mean, if nobody comes forward for your zone, if they're interested, it can be from any zone.
Correct.
Yeah, my intent is to make sure and make clear that we can reach out for someone initially from the zones that are vacant. And then if not, of course, we will gladly, be thankful that anyone who wants to volunteer to this committee.
Okay. Okay, any other questions about the board, the committee? No? Okay. So this is an informal meeting. So we're open to the public because we still have enough board members here that we need to have this open to the public. And just so that the public can get an idea of what we're looking at. We're not here tonight to discuss the budget document itself. In fact, we haven't even provided that. It's not been made available yet. This is just a basic orientation. There's no public comment, but the public is allowed to watch or be present at this meeting. So with that, we'll get started. So first, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. It takes a lot of dedication to come to a meeting where we're not going to be discussing the budget so that you can get trained on a budget. And probably most of you have heard a lot of this before, but it's always a good refresher when you're not dealing with it every day. So I appreciate all the time that you guys put into this and being willing to come to this training. So I've provided you a handout and we'll also post this on the website after the meeting so that the public can view what you've seen. And part of this is just when we're developing a budget, part of it is making sure that we're meeting the vision, the mission statement, and the district goals and priorities. So I just wanted to include those three things on this so that you guys were aware. The vision is that Newburgh School District students will graduate with the knowledge and skills needed to be successful, contributing citizens of the 21st century. That's mine. Okay. Okay, so there's the vision. Sorry, I forgot it was there. I have to use the mic, so I can't stand up and watch that. So I'm trying to follow on my paper too, but the mission statement: in partnership with parents and our community, the Newburgh School District will educate all students to achieve their full potential as knowledgeable, self-assured citizens ready for college and/or careers. And then our priorities: provide high quality, well-rounded and healthy educational experiences, build strong relationships with families, community and students that promote trust, support and collective responsibility, ensure every classroom has a high quality, effective educator supported by strong leadership and staff, align resources to accomplish goals with a balanced budget, plan systematically and strategically so that Newburgh Public Schools continues to succeed and thrive in the future. Is there any questions about the mission statement, the vision, or the yes?
Yeah, I'm sure this isn't the time to change it, but I guess my thought is on the mission statement, it just struck me as the last sentence. And I won't read the whole thing. Well, I guess it's just one, really. It says the last line: assured citizens ready for college and/or careers. And I just think that it should be worded as assured citizens ready for continuing education and/or careers. Something to that effect. We talk about just continuing education as college, but it could be vocational schools, on the job training, right? But ultimately, all of them are have the intent or ultimate goal of being a career, right?
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
And I think that's something,
Yeah.
Yeah. and I think that's something that as a board would need to be revised.
Yeah.
But yes, I would agree. It's no longer just about getting kids to go to college because there's a lot of technical schools out there and trade schools that students have a lot of success in. So
Yeah,
we want to make sure
military.
we're
maybe,
promoting that.
maybe military too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I still have a question?
Yes.
Mission priorities are part of the strategic plan, and that's where we pull them from, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so our objectives tonight is to, number one, go over the budget calendar. Go over the purpose of the budget committee, the roles of the budget committee, and give you a basic understanding of the school accounting system. So on January 24th, the board adopted the budget calendar. And so that meant we're here today doing this work session. Basically just talking about budget parameters, budget training, and giving you any additional information as necessary without making reference to an actual budget document. Our first meeting where we will actually address the budget document is going to be May 2nd, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. At that meeting, we will elect officers, give the budget message, give you some budget detail, and provide additional information that is open to the media and the public, and there will be public comment. Then May 16th, we will hold a second budget committee meeting if needed. It will also be from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. We'll provide any additional budget detail, any additional information, and our hope is that by the end of that meeting, we will have an approved budget to take to the board of directors. That one also is open to the public and will have public comment. And then June 13th, we will have a budget hearing at 6:30 p.m. And that is so that the public can come in and give comment on the approved budget document. And then at the board meeting that night, the board will decide whether or not to adopt that budget. If they adopt that budget, then that will set our spending for next year, approve our appropriations, and approve our tax levy for the following year. Any questions about that? Yes.
With the public comment, do you have a plan on when that would be at those meetings?
So on the 2nd of May, it will be probably after the election of the budget committee officers, and after the budget message. And then on the 16th, we would probably start the meeting off with that. We will make the budget available to the community and available online at the same time that you guys receive a copy of that budget, proposed budget. So there will be time prior to look over the budget document, find any questions, identify any concerns, so that we can address them at the first meeting. Okay. Okay, so yes.
In the past years, we've had to add an extra budget session between the two. It looks like there's at least enough days to add one session if needed, along with the 5-day public notice.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep, we absolutely can add an additional meeting if we need it. Yep. So the purpose of the budget committee is to create spending authority. That's required by Oregon budget law because we're using public dollars from taxes and different fees that are charged statewide. We're going to present you a balanced financial plan. So when you get that first proposed document, it will be a balanced document. And when we say balanced, we mean the revenues will match the expenditures. One of your major purposes is to certify property taxes for the county assessor, and then receive public comment over the proposed district spending, and discuss the proposed budget document, make well-educated recommendations to the school board for adoption. So that is the budget committee purpose. So your roles as budget committee members is to hear the budget message, receive the proposed budget and review it, hear from the public, engage in constructive conversation about the proposed budget, ensure that the budget aligns with district priorities, and approve the budget and the tax rate for adoption. So what you cannot do is determine salaries, determine staffing levels, add or delete programs, adopt policies, deliberate outside of a public meeting or without a quorum, and you cannot adopt the budget. So only the board can adopt the budget.
Question. in regards
Yes.
To. Public.
Mhm.
In the past, there's been a budget committee email that has been set up. Is that still currently active?
I don't know.
Okay, maybe we can look into that because often there were questions that were emailed in to budget committee members.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so when we talk about school accounting, I tried to kind of color coordinate these or color code them so that they would be a little bit easier to follow. And a lot of what we do is based on Oregon law that governs how we set our budget account codes. So there's a document that's probably 300 pages of account code structure that we use. And so I'm not going to sit here and go over 300 pages with you, but I want to give you kind of a basic overview so that you understand what we're looking at. So our account code structure has 6 pieces. The first one is called the fund. Second one is the function, the object, the center, the area, and the sub area. So funds are basically defined by a revenue source. So most of you have probably heard of a general fund. That is money that is supported by tax revenue and by the state school fund. There's also some fees, some reserves, and if we get any money from the ESD. 200s are our special revenue funds. So it's not just a 200, it could be a 201, a 202, a 203, a 254, a 264. Anything that starts with the number 2 is a special revenue fund. What that means is there's a specific funding source for a specific purpose that can't be used for anything else. So we put those monies and those expenditures into a separate fund so that we can track them. Okay, so a lot of these are grants. It might be student body funds. It might be food service, or it could be donations from private citizens for a specific purpose. The idea is that by putting it in the 200 fund, you're limiting how that money can be spent to the grant's original purpose or to the revenue's intended purpose. Yes.
Question on that. Is that where the ESSER funds were applied?
Yes. Yep, they were actually in a 201 fund. Yep. Okay, and then the 300s are debt service. So specifically in the state of Oregon, any fund that starts with a 3 means that you're paying basically a long-term debt on that. Okay, so sometimes there's some reserves set in those funds for long-term debt payments. Like when we collect taxes for bond payments, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to spend 100% of what's collected every year. So anything that's left in there is still left in that debt service fund to repay the loan.
I have a question.
Yes,
It's written here as debit service, so you mean debt service without the I.
yes, without the I, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, and then 400 is capital projects. So capital projects are anything that would affect our fixed asset schedule. It might be a major construction project. It's generally speaking, it's something that is a permanent addition to the district. It could be a server for technology. It could be a new school building. It could be new playground. There's lots of different things that it could be, but they're sometimes supported by tax revenue or federal grants, state grants. In our case, our capital project funds are supported by bond dollars and transfers from the general fund. Okay. So the next piece of our account is functions. And these are typically based on operations. So when we look at the second set of numbers, anything that starts with a 1 is direct instruction to students. That means anything that is in a 1,000 fund directly relates to just providing education to the students. Okay, that doesn't include your administration. It doesn't include your power bill. It doesn't include your technology. It doesn't include all of those support things. It is what does it take in the classroom, the teachers, the staff, the supplies, the books. Those are the things that are direct instruction to students. The 2000s are your support services. So that's like your fiscal services department. It might be special services like occupational therapy. It might be speech services, counselors, because counselors and speech therapists aren't providing direct instruction to students. They're supplementing that instruction to students. So they fall into those 2000 functions. Enterprise and community. These are typically reserved just for nutrition services and for scholarships. 4,000 is your facility acquisitions and construction. So this could be new construction. It could be all this bond work that we're doing is in a 4,000 function because it's all part of a capital project. Yes. Yes.
So it looks like, correct me if I'm wrong, going back to the school accounting, it's a 21-digit accounting code. Is that how I understand this?
Yes.
Okay. So we just went over the funds, right?
So that was the
three
first three
digits.
numbers. Mhm.
So going into the second one, the function that you're reviewing now, am I right in saying that, for example, instruction, direct instruction, 1,000 could have a precursor of the 3 digits of any of the ones we talked about, but
Yes.
mostly they'll come on certain ones,
So you could have a
like
function
general
code.
fund.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, on any of you could have direct instruction in Title One. Which Title One would be a 200 fund, but
Yeah.
it would still be a 1,000 function.
Right.
So yes,
So it could be 100, 1,000, 200, 1,000.
yes,
Okay.
could be 201, 1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it could be 201, 1,283.
Okay.
But because it starts with a 1, it's still direct instruction to students.
Okay. Thank you.
So 5,000 functions are for debt service and bond issuance. Some interfund transfers are classified under the 5,000 function. And then ESD funds can also be tracked under the 5,000 function. 6,000 is just your operating contingency. So operating contingency is like your savings account. It's what you set aside each year for an emergency, not necessarily something you intend to use and take special board action to use that fund, those funds, by moving it from contingency into an expenditure. And that's different from your 7,000, which is reserves for your future years. So if the board puts money into, or the budget committee puts money into a 7,000 fund as a reserve for a future year, the idea is that, and barring some natural disaster, we're not touching those funds in the next school year. Okay, so it's more of like putting your money in a money market account instead of just a savings account. So a savings account you kind of have access to. Money market, it's maybe a little bit harder to have access to it. If you see a 0000 on a function code, that means that what you're looking at is a revenue line item. Okay. So after those first 7 numbers, so the first 3 were your fund, the next 4 were your function, and now we've got 4 more, and that's your objects. And your objects are based on the services that they support. Okay, so anything that starts in 01 is going to be wages. Okay, so a salary for a teacher, an hourly rate for an EA, your cooks, It doesn't matter what function they're under. It doesn't matter what fund they're under. If those 4 digits start with 01, that's going to be wages. If it starts with 02, that means those are the employee benefits. 03 are purchase services. So not services that we provide directly, but we maybe hire an outside agency to come in, like our substitutes. We use an outside service. We don't pay the substitutes directly. Instead, we pay this outside service to provide substitutes for us. So it's a purchase service. We have somebody come in and work on an HVAC system. That is a purchase service. Okay. 04 are supplies and materials. 05 is capital outlay. So those again are your big projects that are going to be on your fixed asset schedule. 06 are dues and fees and insurance. So when we pay our liability insurance every year, it comes out of a 06 account. If we pay fees on a bank account, they are always charged to a 06. 07 is for transfers, and those are transfers between funds. So if we wanted to go from the general fund to a capital fund, the transfer account object would be a 07. And then a 08 are reserves. Questions on those? There's a lot of information. That's why I made sure that I got you guys handouts so that if you needed to take them home and look at them and kind of have it as a guide, you would have it available. So objects can also mean a revenue. So when we have that 000 in the function, if your next set of numbers starts with a number other than 0, then it means it's a revenue. So like your 1000s as an object code would be your taxes, any interest that you earn, and any kind of miscellaneous revenue or fees that you might collect. So we collect fees for, taking construction class. We're going to record those revenue into a 1000 object code so that we can track those revenues and make sure that they're spent appropriately. The 2000 are intermediate sources. So these are like county funds, not to be confused with taxes. And then any ESD revenue. 3000 are your state sources. So your state school fund and any state grants. And again, you can have any of these revenue accounts in any fund. Okay. 4,000 is federal sources. So your federal grant or any revenue in lieu of taxes. And 5,000 are like your debt financing, interfund transfer, any sale of capital assets, and your beginning fund balance. Okay. Okay, so after we got through the 3 numbers of the fund, the 4 numbers of the function, the 4 numbers of the object, then we move on to the center. And the center is used to identify like a specific location or maybe a very specific grant source. So each one of our schools in our district has a 3-digit code. So like the high school maybe is a 616. And, one of our schools is a 148. And I don't expect you to all remember them, but I did include some of our most common ones. And this is regardless of what fund they are in so that we can track expenses by building. Okay. Questions about that? There's not really a way to make this super exciting, so. So the next 3 numbers are your area of responsibility. This is how the state decides how much you're spending on science, how much you're spending on special ed, how much you're spending on math, how much you're spending on sports. So there's just 3 numbers out there, and they are assigned in our little book of codes what we can use or what code we have to use for certain subjects. So another common one I didn't include on this is like a 050. And 050 means that all the kids stay in one classroom and they don't rotate out based on subject. So most of your elementary schools on the area of responsibility are going to have a 050. Yes,
Maintenance of effort.
yes. Okay, so maintenance of effort is in relation to our special education. And every year we're required to maintain or increase the amount of money we spend in special education. And we report on that annually. So when we assign a code 320, then it's specific to expenditures that can be coded as to maintenance of effort to make sure when we pull a report and we run that report for all of our 320 sub areas, then we can see exactly how much we've spent on special education services within the district. Okay, and then the sub area is the last three numbers of the account code, and these are set by the district. So the way our budget has been developed at a district level is that they mark certain grants with a sub area code, and that code identifies what grant they're funding. So in Fund 201, when we're talking about ESSER, all of our ESSER has a different 3-digit code on the end. So we know if it's 234, it's ESSER 2. If it's 239, it's ESSER 3. That way we can see exactly what we're spending on each grant, making sure that we don't overspend anything, and making sure that when we do our claims, we're claiming the expenditures that are relevant to the grant. Okay. Yes.
The reason why 239 ESSER 3 is listed 2 times.
No. No, it wasn't. I was just trying to give you a sample of the different codes. So, and I totally missed that when I went, I think because I copied the box and then just pasted it and went back and changed it, and I just forgot to change those. So PowerPoints are not necessarily my strong suit, but I do the best I can. So, okay. So some of our biggest funding comes from the state school fund, and that's kind of what our budget hinges on. So state school fund is determined biannually. So every 2 years, the state determines how much money they're going to give to the schools. And they break that out through this really long process formula that I've been doing this for 13 years, and I still struggle sometimes to figure out how they have come up with this formula, but it's based on a lot of different factors. How many SPED kids do you have? But you can only have so many, because after so many, you're not going to get extra rating, because special education kids take more money to support in education. So they want to keep that in mind. Our dual language students or migrant students, all of these teen parents, they all take more money and more time to provide an education to. So they give us weights for those things so that it's kind of an even playing field. We also get adjustments based on teacher experience, because if you have a brand new school with all brand new teachers, it is not nearly as expensive to fund an education as it is if you have 20 teachers who've been there for 20 years and their salaries are much more expensive. And we're not trying to push those people out, and we want districts to still be able to fund them. So they're going to give us extra weighting for the teachers who cost a little bit more to have in the district. Okay. So when we're talking about weighting, they weight our portion of the state school fund based on all of these different factors. There's a separate handout that I gave you that actually breaks down all of the different carve outs. And if you look specifically on the very last page, not on the very last page, it's second to the last page, it talks about what is our ADMR, which is our our average daily membership resident, and then how many students how many of those students are ESL students? Okay, so if we look at that, we have 312 of them, and they're giving us an extra half student weighting for each one of those. Students in pregnant and parenting programs, we're getting a full extra count for each one of those because they take more resources, they need more support, and we want to continue to be able to support those students as they go through the education system. So the second page of this other handout that I gave you, and I think I have some of those, yeah, so I've even put a little snapshot of it up here, is just how they're going to come up with that weight. So what they call that weight is our ADMW, which is our average daily membership weighted. When they take that membership, what they also take into account is that you might have 5,000 kids one year, and the next year you might have had a really big graduating class, and now you've only got 4,200 kids. And that's a huge impact on finances for a school. So what they do is they look at they look at 2 years, and they pick which one of those 2 years was your highest ADMW. And that's what they're going to base your state school funding on, because otherwise we would be letting teachers go 1 year, hiring them back 2 years later, and we would always be in this constant flux of trying to hire staff, letting staff go just to accommodate the shift in enrollment. Okay. So whenever we talk about the ADMW, remember that that number is identified as what is the highest over 2 years. Okay.
Find the whole harm-
The what?
whole harmless,
What are you looking at?
if not up there. Hold harmless policy.
For,
for budgeting.
I would have to do some research on it.
I think what she's referring to is what you already mentioned about the,
That, okay, I
2
think
years
that's
ago.
what you're referring to,
Yeah.
is the hold harmless policy. So my question, sorry, I wanted to clarify that that's what you were,
Okay.
so it's 2 years.
Uh-huh.
And you take the highest year, how are we looking because of enrollment over the past couple of years? So it's hold harmless for 2 years, but only 2 years, and then you have to pay back.
Right.
So where are we on that?
So unfortunately, I'm not going to discuss any even enrollment tonight because that's part of the budget committee meeting. And we're not supposed to discuss anything in the orientation tonight, but we will be providing all that information with a historical look at the ADMW for several years back. Okay. And I'm sorry, I don't know that I've ever heard it called that. So that's why my dumbfounded look maybe. So, okay, so this just shows, I was just showing on this slide, this is what the estimate for next year came out for our ADMW. And you can see that for next year, they're anticipating 4,848.63. And last year we had 4,890.66. So when they look at our state funds calculation, they're actually going to use the ADMW from last year or from this current year. Okay.
I have one question.
Yes.
Only it's a simple math.
Uh-huh.
Question. So I'm looking at the 646 IEP students, chapter 11. I get the math on that.
Mhm.
What is factoring into the students on IEP above the 11% of ADMR, because there's more than 38.3 students between 646 and the 11% cap. I'm just curious how that next,
How they came up with that
Yeah.
next
is
portion.
that a state factor? or
It is a
okay.
state factor.
Okay. thank
Yes.
you.
So if we look at what in our current year, we're at the 4890.66, but last year we were at 4997.31. So this year's state school fund is based on last year's ADMW. Okay. So I also included the estimate for this current year and for next year. And keep in mind, these are only estimates and they will change before the budget is finalized. And this is just based on districts making adjustments all the way to the end of the fiscal year on enrollment, the number of students, different reports that are sent to the district or to the state from the districts. And any adjustment, if Beaverton has a large swing, it will affect how much state school funding we're getting. Okay,
Hey,
yes,
quick question. The
Yes.
AMR, when is it finalized for the year? So obviously after the year ends.
yes, it's not finalized for 2 years after the budget is finalized. So when we make adjustments with the state, we're making adjustments on data that is 2 years old. Yeah. Okay, so this is kind of the process of the formula that they give us each year. And basically what they're trying to do is break down how much money does it cost to educate each student in the state of Oregon? And so that in return, how much of this are we going to get as Newburgh School District? One of the things they take into consideration is transportation costs. And we get reimbursed 70% of all of our transportation costs as part of our state school funding. When we look at state school funding, though, it is not just a flat dollar amount because they also look at what does your district bring in taxes? Okay, so they want to look at all of our local revenue, and then they're going to adjust how much state school funding they give us based on our local revenue. What this does is it ensures that districts who are in small rural communities or high poverty, that they're still able to make that dollar amount for what it costs to educate a student in the state of Oregon, so that every student in Oregon is treated the same and has the same exposure to education. Okay. So, and I included in the second handout, which is just the estimate that they came out with. This one is on February 22nd. They are coming out with another one, I believe, in May. So like I said, this number will ever be changing until they finalize the budget. And this is based on that $9.9 billion budget that the governor and the Ways and Means have both mentioned. Although that number is not set, that is likely what we will be building our budget on. Okay, so just the same thing. So the tax levy, this is something else that is important for the budget committee to approve. And really the tax levy itself can't be increased locally. Right now, Newburgh's rate is 4.6616 per 1,000 of assessed value. And then there's an additional levy for the bond that was passed that we're using for all this wonderful construction going on. Yes.
I apologize.
Back on this side.
State school funding.
This one.
Yes,
Okay.
I understand you can ask it or answer it. District average teacher experience.
Mhm.
Was that down, up or down since last year and the year before? And I know you can answer that. The part that I'd like to answer after that next meeting would be, what is that financial?
Okay, so I don't think there was a change in our average teacher experience. I believe that 23, 24 and 22, 23 are exactly the same at 13.3. So going back farther than that, I'd have to look and see what it is.
That would be good.
Okay, yep. And I'm happy to include that in the budget committee meeting presentation. Yep. Okay, so what's next? On or near April 25th, the proposed budget document will be made available to the public and to the budget committee. We will post it on the Newburgh Public Schools website. We will also email it or mail it to each of you, depending on your preference. May 2nd, we will have our first budget committee meeting. It will be a public meeting. We will take public comment and we will discuss the document that you received the week prior to that. On May 16th at 6 p.m., we'll meet again, review any suggestions, have further discussion about the proposed budget, provide any new information that is needed, and then hopefully be able to make a recommendation to the board to adopt the proposed budget. On June 13th at 6:30, the school board will hold the public hearing. And this will be the opportunity for the public to come in and give comment on the approved document, which will also be published on our website, so that the public has access to it prior to the meeting. At 7 p.m. as part of the regular school board meeting, the school board will take action to adopt the approved budget, approve all appropriations, and approve the tax rate levy. And then after June 14th, but before June 30th, we will publish the adopted budget on the website, making it available to everyone through the district office as well if they prefer a hard copy of the budget.
Quick question.
Yes.
So for all public comment, that has to be in person here at the district office, but
Yes. Yep. Any other questions? This is my contact information. I am happy to answer any question about processes of the budget committee meeting or the budget committee itself. I'm happy to, once you have the copy of the budget, if somebody wants to sit down and ask me questions about the budget, I'm happy to meet with you to go over the proposed budget document if you have questions. I'm happy to meet one-on-one to answer questions for anybody that has any. Because I know sometimes people feel a little intimidating asking questions in a public meeting. So I'm happy to answer any questions. We can't deliberate or change anything in the proposed document, but I am happy to help understand and answer any general questions that you might have. So any questions?
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'll second the kudos on a really good presentation and really very, very great way to show us and explain to us all these accounts. But this is my second time doing this, and I'll say that, not that I didn't understand the first time, but this was very, very clear. So I appreciate your work on this.
Thank you.
when we do get any further presentations with departments, just like really hard for me to read, sorry.
Yes. Yes, when I look at things on the overhead projector screen, they look a little different than they do on an Apple TV, so. Yes.
And Heather, I got clarification on the budget committee email that is active, and I will make sure that all of you are added to it, so.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.